Good evening, everyone. Bienvenidos a todos y todas. I'm Eloise Gomez-Reyes, and I'm the Assembly Majority Leader representing the 47th Assembly District. This district encompasses the communities of Fontana, Colton, Grand Terrace, Rialto, San Bernardino, and the unincorporated communities of Bloomington and Muscoy. Co-hosting this town hall is our dear friend, Congressman Pete Aguilar. Also, the Inland Empire Concerned African American Churches, Legal Aid of San Bernardino County, and the Community Action Partnership of San Bernardino County. Before we begin, I would like to invite Bishop Simmons to provide an invocation. And Bishop, if you would, allow me just one moment to say a few words in Spanish. Quiero decirles a todos que estamos proveyendo este discurso en español también. Si gusta recibir la información en español, ahorita en el chat vamos a escribir qué es lo que deben hacer para que puedan recibir todo traducido en español. And Maha will provide that information for anyone who wants to have this information in Spanish. Bishop Simmons, if you would please open us up.
Thank you so much. Scripture tells us, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. Father, we thank you for this time. We thank you, God, for all that you have before us. We thank you for giving us the opportunity to provide information to your people. Now we ask for your presence to be with us, that people who may be hurting will receive the relief that they need. Bless us now as we move forward. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, again, I want to welcome all of you, and I want to thank all of you for joining us today for this Housing Relief Town Hall. As I mentioned earlier, joining us today are special guests, Congressman Pete Aguilar, Bishop Calvin Simmons, from the Inland Empire Concerned African American Churches. And before we get started, I do want to set some expectations for the town hall. After a brief introduction, I will ask the panelists to share some opening comments. We'll then follow with a series of questions. We have collected questions for the past several days from the community regarding COVID-19 related eviction relief, rental relief, utilities assistance, mortgage assistance. And we've received, as you can imagine, a number of excellent questions. We're going to try to get through as many of them as possible. If during this town hall you think of a question, please write it down and email it to my office, or you can put it in the chat. We may be taking a few from the chat box if time permits, but we will try to get an answer to you if we don't get to it today. Now, a little history of the program. In light of the pandemic recovery, now is the time to ensure we address the core underlying issues affecting not only the 47th District, but all of California. One of the issues that affects us most is housing. And in order to ensure economic security, we have to make sure that communities have access to affordable, quality housing. I'm happy to see that this is a priority for the legislature. And in the Assembly, we're seeing efforts to expedite housing and help folks struggling financially because of COVID. There are two bills that I will share with you. One is AB 15, the other AB 16, both introduced by my colleague, Assemblymember David Chu, who is the chair of the Assembly Housing Committee. In these bills, he's working to ensure that folks who have been unable to pay their rent because of financial hardships caused by COVID, help them so that they do not lose their housing. AB 15 extends eviction protection until 2022, and AB 16 would provide rental relief for those in debt. As many of you may know, we had a prior town hall. On January 29th of this year, the COVID-19 Tenant Relief Act, that is SB 91, was signed into law, and it extended eviction protections to COVID-19 impacted tenants. And it also established the state's emergency rental assistance program, money received from our good friends like Congressman Pete Aguilar at the national level. The act extends from the Assembly extended previous eviction protections, and now the protections are through June 30th 2021. These protections are available to any tenant who attests that they are not able to pay full rent due to COVID-19 related circumstances. This occurs through a declaration of COVID-19 related financial distress that must be returned within 15 business days, but we'll hear a whole lot more about that when we speak with our guests. Now, until July 1st of 2021, a landlord could only evict a tenant for a legally valid reason known as a just cause eviction. Again, we're going to hear more details about this shortly. There are a number of emergency rental assistance programs that are available for households with incomes below 80% of area median income. And there is a priority specifically to help households that are below 50% of area median income, as well as households where we have a member that is unemployed and has been for the last 90 days. The program also prioritizes the payment of back rent or arrearages. Now, a landlord can choose to accept 80% of any unpaid rent that is owed. And again, our guests are going to go into into the details. We will hear from Carl Wallen later on in this town hall on the important details of this program in San Bernardino. If you live in the city of San Bernardino, the rules may be slightly different from the statewide program. The program is being directed by United Way's Inland Southern California 211 Plus. So we're very excited to be able to offer this to you. And I want to begin by asking Congressman Pete Aguilar to share a few words to kick us off. Congressman?
There we go. Now we're working. Thank you so much, Majority Leader. I appreciate the introduction, and I want to thank the other panelists and especially Bishop Simmons for all of his leadership. Like you said, Majority Leader, this is a unique time, and we need to make sure we're doing everything we can for our region. Before the pandemic, we all know that the shortage of affordable housing was one of the most pressing issues in our community. This problem was made worse by the financial hardships that the crisis caused for so many families. I was proud to help pass the American Rescue Plan because it provided a lifeline to so many in our community. The plan specifically included $21 billion in emergency rental assistance. That's on top of the $25 billion that we passed in December. I believe that the Biden administration is going to make some announcements in the next few days, letting everyone know how those allocations have come. It provided $5 billion for temporary housing for those experiencing homelessness, and it included $10 billion for mortgage assistance to help homeowners make ends meet. Despite all of this, we know that there are still families in our community who are struggling due to no fault of their own. My office has consistently advocated for adjusting FHA loan limits to help families in the region in San Bernardino County to help people access lower interest loans so they can become homeowners. This will continue to be a focus for me and my team, and I know that we have partners at HUD. I want to give a special shout out to Lori at HUD, who is joining us today, who has been a key ally in a lot of these conversations. And at the local level, for all of our local leaders who are helping to provide relief and solutions for Inland Empire families. Thanks so much for the invitation, and I look forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much. And I'm glad you mentioned home ownership. I think that's an area that we all are trying to work on because that's what provides the intergenerational wealth, the building of wealth. And we have to work on that. I think right now, as you said, we're trying to work on the housing, the immediate needs. And I appreciate all that you have done in your leadership role in Congress. It's made a big difference here in our community. And I sincerely appreciate that. Thank you, Congressman. And now I'd like to invite Bishop Simmons to share a few words.
Thank you so much, Majority Leader. Thank you so much, Majority Leader and Congressman Aguilar. It's good to see you once again. You know, I am the president of the Inland Empire Concerned African American Churches, IEC, AAC. And we are addressing the needs, leading change, and improving our community. Back in June of 2020, we held a press conference, and the purpose of the press conference was we were collaborating with COPE, Congregations Organized for Prophetic Engagement, and the purpose was to stomp out COVID. And so we began a process of testing. Our congregations began testing for the COVID-19 virus. And then after that, we began educating, having webinars like this, educating our people on the coming vaccinations. And then we joined in on the vaccinations. As a matter of fact, Majority Leader and Congressman, we all got a chance to say hello to one another when the governor came to the city of San Bernardino. And that was the moment that we decided to have a little chat and said, now it's time to connect our people to the help that they need. Connect them to access to mortgage relief, rental relief, and relief with their utilities. And here we are right now, putting these pieces together so we can start putting our families back together. We all know 2020 was a trying year, and 2021 is pointing us in the right direction. But at the end of this year, going into 2022, we want to be on our feet and excelling like we were. So I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your leadership. We appreciated having Governor Gavin Newsom here in our community, and your leadership, as well as the leadership of COPE and other organizations, makes a big difference. When we talk about having grassroots organizations reaching the people, we often look to you, and you know it, and you always step up. I thank you so very much for that. So now let's begin with at the federal level. Let's talk about federal relief and get an update from Lori Udit from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, that's HUD. Lori joined HUD as the Los Angeles Field Office Director in July 2020. She has more than 10 years in leadership, strategic planning, policy development, and initiating and strengthening strategic alliances with key community stakeholders. In addition, she has over 15 years of experience providing programmatic and fiscal oversight to a federal grant portfolio supporting service and volunteering, serving as a Deputy Regional Administrator for AmeriCorps West Region. In her current role, she supports HUD's place-based initiative work, strengthening and supporting communities through promise zones, envision centers, choice neighborhoods, and opportunity zones, while furthering HUD initiatives throughout Southern California. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to be here, pleased to be part of this conversation. As has been noted, these really are challenging and unprecedented times. And so looking forward to participating in this conversation today. I am gonna pull up a PowerPoint slide here. Are you seeing that?
No.
All right.
Looks like it's coming up.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. All right. So move along here. Sorry for the delay. So I want to share some information again from the federal perspective. And so first and foremost, want to note the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued an order banning evictions for certain renters, which has been extended until June 30, 2021. The CDC issued the eviction moratorium to protect public health and prevent further spread of COVID-19. So at this point in time, I don't have any information about an extension to that date, but we're very aware that that date is approaching and recognizing all of the resources that are going to be highlighted today to assist renters. So in terms of rental assistance, all HUD-assisted renters, including those who are in public housing or using housing choice vouchers in the private rental market, are eligible to report any decreases in wages, job hours, or family income so that income-based rent payment can be temporarily decreased and housing subsidies temporarily increased. There is rental assistance in the CARES Act and in the more recent American Recovery Plan, and those funds are being administered by the Department of Treasury, awarded to state and local governments to operate the rental assistance programs in those local communities. So if you're a tenant with a renter with a financial hardship, we encourage you to be in contact with your landlord to discuss your circumstances and then potential solutions. And then additional resources for renters can be found via the 2 links listed here on this slide. From those links, you'll be able to find a resource locator to help you find a local public housing authority, search for housing, and many more relevant resources for renters. So I also want to highlight some resources for homeowners. So the Federal Housing Authority's foreclosure and eviction moratorium is also in effect. And that goes through June 30, 2021 as well. So if you're behind on your FHA insured mortgage payments and you occupy your property, the moratorium protects you from foreclosure and eviction proceedings. So I also don't have any information to share at this point in time about a possible extension beyond that date. Right now, that June 30th date is very much on our radar. The FHA is also permitting borrowers to enter into forbearance, which would be a pause or a reduction in their monthly mortgage. So if you have a mortgage that's insured by FHA and you're unable to make your mortgage payment because of COVID-19, you're eligible for FHA's COVID-19 forbearance. You must request that assistance by June 30th. So you want to make sure to contact your mortgage servicer to request that forbearance. You can find their contact information on your mortgage statement, and you can also go to the most recent mortgage the servicer's website to apply for forbearance there. If you don't have an FHA insured mortgage and you're concerned about making payments on your mortgage, we encourage you to contact your lender to identify what options you have through your lender. We also encourage you to take a look at the resources on the 2 links listed here on this slide. And then I also want to highlight the housing counseling as a resource. So housing counseling includes, so HUD sponsors housing counseling agencies throughout the country, and they can provide advice on not only buying a home, renting, they also can provide one-on-one assistance counseling to help you with potential defaults, foreclosures, credit issues. So that link there up at the top, if you click on that link, you can go to a search page to identify a mortgage housing counselor in your area who can provide specific assistance for the situation that you're facing and help you find solutions. The other resources that I have here on this slide, a link to our public housing resources. If you need public housing assistance or you want specific information about public housing programs, such as housing choice vouchers, you'll want to contact your local public housing authority. And so you can use that link to search for the housing authority in your area. And then lastly, I included a link on COVID-19 resources, which is on the HUD website, which provides much more information about everything I've covered here today and a whole lot more. And so again, I just want to highlight, I know I'm not covering every situation, and many of you have very specific situations. I know from some of the questions that were submitted in advance. And so I do encourage you to utilize that housing counseling resource if you have very specific circumstances that you want to talk to a counselor about and work through what some of the solutions might be. And the last slide that I have here just includes contact information for our HUD Los Angeles field office, phone number and an email address. If you've got specific questions for HUD, we would definitely want to hear from you and provide you the answers and the resources that would be most valuable to you. So thank you, and I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Lori. I think one takeaway is that this is a federal program. if you heard anything and you have more questions, besides calling the office of the number that Lori has provided, please know that Congressman Pete Aguilar's office, his staff are ready to help. Isn't that right, Congressman?
It is.
And that's really important. That's what our offices are there for, is to make sure that we provide whatever assistance we can provide to you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Lori. Next, we'd like to hear from Carl Wallen. He's a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino, and he's going to present information on SB 91 rental assistance. Carl Wallen focuses on the practice of housing law in both San Bernardino and Riverside counties. Carl began as a volunteer with the Legal Aid Society and later became an attorney with them. He has 7 years of experience with housing. Carl?
Thank you so much, Majority Leader. Myself and all of Legal Aid, we're so happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation, and we're very happy to share some knowledge and some light on some of the more recent protections that are in place. I'll be going over protections for renters, as well as going over some basic info on how to begin requesting rental assistance and relief if you're behind. Just allow me just a moment so I can pop up my PowerPoint presentation for you all. All right, just let me know if that pulled up. All right, so first, I would just like to sort of give a slight disclaimer. Forgive me, I am an attorney. It's oftentimes what we do. This information is current as of today, but the law is changing very rapidly and on all levels, at the federal level, at the state level, and in some cases at the local level. So please, if you do experience an issue, do not hesitate to contact an attorney who is familiar with the laws and the laws as they may change. Always consult an attorney before undertaking any major legal decisions, as in light of how fast things are changing, you'll never know exactly how those decisions will play out unless you have that consultation. Speaking of which, if you do need that type of consultation, Legal Aid Society of San Bernardino is available. We do service those in San Bernardino and Riverside County. We are a nonprofit 501c3 organization that offers free legal services to seniors and low-income members of our community. Today, I was invited to speak partly on the COVID-19 Tenant Relief Act, essentially in its current form, SB 91. As some people might know, it has been extended several times. It does offer pandemic protection and additional protections if you meet COVID-19 eligibility. It's currently set to expire on the 30th of June. That may or may not be extended. So just stay tuned and look into it and see if there's any additional protections after June 30th of 2021. But currently it is set to expire at that time. One of the major things SB 91 does is it requires cause in all evictions. Now, there was previously state law that we'll briefly go over in this presentation called AB 1482 that also created cause requirements to evict, but it did not apply to all evictions. So SB 91 just really raised the bar on that and applied it to virtually every eviction scenario does require cause. Now, we have to be careful when we say cause, because whenever you think cause, you would usually think that's something that the tenant did. The tenant did something wrong. That's cause. Well, you're partly right. And that's what's called at-fault just cause. Under at-fault just cause, breaches of the lease, committing nuisance, waste, or failure or refusal to extend your lease, inappropriately assigning or subletting in controversy to the lease, refusal to allow your landlord valid entry after him giving you legal notice as required, the 24-hour written notice in writing, unlawfully using the premises. Those are at fault just cause. Those are typically acts committed by the tenant and do constitute at fault just cause, and you can be evicted for those reasons right now if you receive proper notice and receive proper legal procedure thereafter. So It's important to know that there are eviction protections, but they're not absolute. There are situations in which you can be evicted. This is one of them. There is another type of cause, and that is called no fault just cause. These are situations in which the tenant might have done absolutely nothing wrong. They could be an absolutely wonderful, beautiful, law-abiding, lease-abiding person and still potentially get evicted right now during the moratorium period. There are limited scenarios under which this can happen. Right now, on the front lines, we're mostly seeing landlords, non-corporations, claiming that they're intending to occupy the property as their principal residence, or their family members are intending to do so. That is a no fault just cause basis under which you can receive a 30 or 60-day notice and be removed for that reason, despite there being protections in place. Another one that we're seeing on the front lines is withdrawal from the rental market. So essentially just no longer desiring to lease the property and using it for some other purpose. That is yet another no fault just cause reason under which you could potentially be evicted if you receive a 30, 60-day notice. So while there are protections, and there are wonderful protections, there are certain circumstances under which you can be evicted. So when you hear on the news that there's a moratorium, I've had clients that indicate, oh, I'm protected, I can't be evicted. It's possible. Please place that call to an attorney, get some information, and see if you're at risk. There are various situations under SB 91 where you can evict right now. While there are protections against lack of payments, if you receive a 15-day notice to pay rent or quit, in order to invoke those protections, in order to get those protections, you have to give the declaration of COVID-19 related inability to pay under state law to your landlord. Preferably do that within that 15-day notice period. There may be some ways in which you can do it later, but please, if possible, do it during that 15-day notice period. Only if you send that declaration will you invoke the protections of SB 91 and be protected from lack of payment eviction. In addition to some other protections, SB 91 also allows for the conversion of unpaid rent into civil debt. Now, the nice part about that is in limited circumstances, your landlord won't be able to evict you, but he will potentially be able to seek judgment against you in small claims court for any back rent. Now, I mean, I did say nice, and the nice part of that is small claims court at least isn't an eviction. So if you do end up having to pay for back rent, at least the small claims process under which they can attempt to get that civil debt would not result in the eviction. All right, so as far as non-payment of rent, the protection period, there is a window of time during which non-payment works, and you do have some protections if you submit that declaration. The applicable period is March 1st, 2020 through June 30th of 2021. Unfortunately, if your landlord goes after you for money before or after that period, you could potentially be evicted without getting the benefits of these wonderful protections. Under SB 91, you're entitled to a 15-day notice if you are a fall behind in rent. If you receive that during that 15 court day period, please submit that declaration if you qualify. You do have to sign under penalty of perjury, so only do it if it's true and correct. But with that said, a lot of people have been affected by COVID-19, either with job loss, income loss, loss of hours, or perhaps even lesser known ways in which you could be financially affected. I'm sure many of the viewers here today have minor children who may or may not have been able to attend school physically in person like they did before. There's costs associated with that, and they're pretty big. So that could be a way in which you've been financially impacted by COVID-19, and a way in which you could end up signing this declaration truthfully under penalty of perjury and getting these protections. If you do sign this declaration, you are protected during the period leading up to June 30th of 2021. However, at the expiration of June 30th, 2021, in order to continue being protected, you had to have paid 25% of the total rent due and owing. It does not need to be delivered in a lump sum. It can have been made in installments, but it does need to be fully paid on or before June 30th of 2021 to continue to receive protections for the back owed rent. Currently, as the law is set to expire starting July, you would begin resuming paying the full amount of rent. Again, we'll go back to my disclaimer, unless the law changes. Currently, there's some additional benefits, such as the sealing of a case being somewhat automatic at this time. Most eviction cases between March 2020 and June 30th, 2021 will be automatically sealed by the court, making it much harder for future landlords to figure out this eviction actually took place. So even those that don't get the full protections of a moratorium might still benefit from that seal. And again, we went over the previous civil debt protection as well. We already covered a little bit of this. How can you sign the financial distress declaration truthfully under penalty of perjury? If you've had any major out-of-pocket expenses, if you've had any increased expenses, loss of income, loss of hours, or if you've had to, perform childcare responsibilities for the elderly, for the disabled or sick, related to COVID-19. In addition to some of the other issues that we discussed, such as eviction protections, there are currently several layers of rent increase protections. AB 1482 that we'll be discussing in a moment does limit the landlords, in most cases, does limit the landlord's ability to raise their rent beyond 10% in 1 year. There are exceptions, as there are in most types of law. So that's a generalized statement that may or may not be true in your specific situation. Please consult an attorney and see if indeed the rent can be raised more than 10%. The notice of rent increase must be in writing. It's typically 30 days for less than 10% and 90 days for 10% or more. During a certain period of time, it's arguable as to whether or not that time is still in place. The state of emergency that was invoked by Governor Newsom did also limit rent from being increased beyond 10%. So we included that in there as an additional. It is arguable and vague as to whether or not that protection still exists, but it's just another layer of protection. I was also invited to discuss how you could obtain rent relief. So we had previously discussed as a panel that there is funding out there that has been issued from the federal government. It's gone down to local governments and is now accessible by tenants who are struggling. In order to qualify for the state rental assistance through housingiskey.com or by calling 909-889-7328, as long as your household income is above 50% but below 80% of the area median income, you can request the state rental assistance in order to help you figure out what exactly that area median income means. We provided that chart there. Just go ahead and find your household size on the chart, and if the amount is less than that amount, you will qualify. Now, if you do qualify, you could potentially qualify for financial assistance for up to 80% of the past due amount accrued between April of 2020 and March of 2021, if the landlord agrees to waive 20% of the unpaid rent. You will get a lesser amount if your landlord does not agree, but if you recall, that lesser amount of 25% would be enough to invoke the protections of SB 91 for the back rent going on into the future. So either way, whether your landlord complies or does not comply, this is really big. And I do encourage you to apply if you believe you will qualify, or maybe even if you're not quite so sure, and if you need assistance. In addition to the state program, there's also the San Bernardino County Rent Relief Partnership. Certain residents may need to use this program and certain other residents may not be able to use this program. For instance, San Bernardino City tenants will need to use this program. Fontana tenants cannot use this program. If you find that you can't use this program, just simply use the one that I listed on the previous slide. Now, San Bernardino County Rent Relief Partnership does require you to be at or below 50% of the area median income. So the threshold is a bit lower than in the previous rental relief that we discussed. Now, if you qualify for this, you may qualify for financial assistance for up to 100% of the past due amount. So not 80, not 25, 100. Now, there's also utility assistance available. That I believe is for now exclusively under the state provisions and not under the more local San Bernardino. But I definitely encourage you to apply if you are either behind in payment of rent or utilities, as it may get you what you need to be in compliance with state law and help prevent evictions and keep your utilities on. I was briefly asked to discuss about AB 1482. The reason I was possibly asked to discuss this is because I kept on saying what happens when SB 91 ends. Well, when SB 91 ends, this takes over. This is AB 1482. It is not set to expire anytime soon. It will continue to have that 10% rent increase cap. It will continue to, in most cases, require cause for termination. There are exclusions. We're going to very briefly run through them. Single family homes that are not owned by a corporation. So, your mom and pop landlords, they might not be bound or beholden to these just cause provisions. That is the main one. Mobile homes have their own set of laws. Those are called the mobile home residency laws. And there may be some other affordable housing situations in which case this doesn't apply. There also may be exemptions for housing in nonprofits, hospitals, religious facilities, extended care facilities, hotel occupancies. These are less common, but it's just important to know that there are some exclusions. Let's discuss the rent cap in a little bit more detail. When I say 10%, it is slightly too general. They are not allowed to increase it by whichever is less, either 5% plus CPI in any 12-month period or 10%. Oftentimes, it's actually less than 10% is what they're allowed to increase it by. But it's a little bit of a complex calculation and it's a little bit too difficult and time consuming for this presentation. In addition to those other items, AB 1482 requires relocation of 1 month's rent or waiver of 1 month's rent if you were evicted for no fault, just cause. You'll recall that we went over that earlier. If you're the tenant and you've done nothing wrong, but there's still cause to evict, such as if the owner wants to move in, you may be entitled to relocation of 1 month's rent or waiver of the last month. In order to determine if you're entitled to just cause protections, there is a term in which you have to have lived there. The easiest way to remember that is you typically have just cause protections if you've lived there for a year or more. There are some exceptions, such as if somebody else moves in, somebody has to have lived there for at least 24 months for everyone to be protected. I went over a lot of information in a very short period of time. We encourage you to seek advice from an attorney. If you qualify for our services, we would love to be the people who give you that advice. Feel free to call us at our hours of operation, Monday through Thursday at 909-889-7328. Not only do we tackle issues related to housing, we're also helping a wide array of other issues such as conservatorship, guardianship, family law, and other civil matters. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carl. Legal aid has been of great assistance to the community for years, and we have a number of legal aids, but San Bernardino Legal Aid has been one of the premier legal aids, and I really appreciate your help in this regard. So last but not least, we want to hear from the program manager, Michelle Mclean, from the Community Action Partnership of San Bernardino County, who will discuss utilities assistance programs. Michelle Mclean is the program manager for the Energy, Education, and Environmental Services Program. She oversees the EEEC operational support team, the outreach workers, call center, and the Victorville Resource Center team, who all work in harmony to provide weatherization, educational, and utility payment assistance and other supportive services to low-income families throughout San Bernardino County. Michelle?
Hi, I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Awesome. Good evening. So I don't have a PowerPoint. I won't be very long before you, but I am very glad to be part of this forum, and I'm appreciative of all of the information that has been already provided from the other presenters. I learned a lot already. Just a little background on our agency. We are located in the city of San Bernardino, providing supportive services to low-income San Bernardino County residents, which include food, housing, transportation, weatherization, utility assistance, and like Assemblyman Maria said, other supportive services. Regarding utility assistance, we process over 10,000 applications on average annually under our Home Energy Assistance Program, otherwise known as the HEAP. We were awarded some additional funding under the CARES Act, which we use to provide a utility assistance. We found that there were a lot of a new demographic of individuals who were requiring these services due to unemployment, just everything that we knew that was going on around that time. As many of you know, energy usage increased during the stay-at-home order and continued remote learning. So utility companies were not disconnecting utilities, and they still aren't. However, this will be ending, to my understanding, by June 30th of 2021. So we do expect a surge in requests for utility assistance due to fears about service interruptions. But there are several organizations who have received additional funding to assist with utility assistance to qualifying customers to pay high utility bills. We are seeing bills on average $2,000 to $3,000, even higher. I saw a bill of $11,000. So we know that this is a big problem, and that's why additional funding has been awarded to assist in this area. We often refer some of our customers to the website www.findhelp.org because we know that sometimes we may not be able to cover the entire bill. But like I said, there are other organizations out there providing that service. So that's all I have for you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I will tell you that Michelle's organization with the CEO, Patricia Nichols, they have provided so much to the community. They have provided food in the community. The lines are long. They've provided testing. Everything that you can imagine that the community needs. Michelle has worked very hard in the weatherization and now utility assistance. So I do encourage you to, those of you who are listening, do look to them and ask for assistance. We've also looked to them for some of our homeless that have called us. And through the services of San Bernardino County, we've been able to house some of our homeless people. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. Okay, let's go to the first question. This one is to Lori from HUD. The question is, I have not received any unemployment benefits for almost 2 months, and I'm falling behind on my bills. My mortgage is currently paid up to date. However, the savings I currently have is going down rapidly. In the next 2 months, I will be down to zero. Is there any type of housing or utility relief I qualify for?
So, a couple things I'll mention for existing resources right now. The links that I provided earlier, well, first, if you're having trouble paying your mortgage and it's an FHA insured mortgage, there are some relief options through HUD. So you can contact your lender. And even if it's not an FHA insured mortgage, contact your lender, find out about forbearance options, find out about other options. The housing counseling resource, there was also a link up on one of the slides with preventing foreclosure resources. And then lastly, I'll share, stay tuned. As Congressman Aguilar noted, through the American Rescue Plan, there are more resources coming. So they're not yet out, but all of that information is coming soon. So I would say stay tuned. I know Carl had posted the Housing is Key website for California. That's a fantastic resource for those of us living in California. So I would say that's a good place to stay tuned into, in addition to HUD resources. And then the Homeowner Assistance Fund is being directly administered by Department of Treasury. So you can also find additional resources there. It's flowing through local entities, state and local communities. So ultimately you'll tap into it more locally than Department of Treasury. But I know I just threw out a lot of stuff, but lots of resources, more information coming soon. So please stay tuned.
Thank you so much, Lori. And I think somebody commented, thank you for thinking of the homeowners. That's so true. We want to think of everybody because we're all suffering because of COVID. Now, here's another question for legal aid. It says, I am behind on my rent due to COVID. What can I do to protect myself from having to pay my past rent all at once? Is bankruptcy an option?
That's a wonderful question. So right now, under the current SB 91 scheme of legislature, in order to avoid eviction for the past due rent that you might owe, you're going to have to pay that 25% amount. It doesn't have to be paid in a lump sum. It could have been given over time in the form of monthly payments. However, that obviously may well be daunting. Even 25% of a year's worth of rent could be a very large sum of money. If you do need assistance, please seek it. Seek that rental assistance that's available under the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Housingiskey.com, housing.ca.gov. 833-430-2122. If you're in San Bernardino, you can call 211 extension 5 or visit sbcrentrelief.com. Now, there was a beautiful additional question added onto there as far as bankruptcy. Bankruptcy could provide very, very temporary relief in the form of the automatic stay. But in most situations, it will not ultimately prevent eviction. The landlord can seek a deferral of the automatic stay as relates to the eviction and then proceed with the eviction. So it usually only creates a short window of time under which it slows things down.
Wonderful. Thank you. Here's another question. This is for Michelle from CAP San Bernardino County. It says, I am in need of utility assistance. As we get closer to the summer months, is there utility assistance that can help me for multiple months?
So I'm not aware of any utility program where a payment is made above what the customer actually owes on their account. However, it is not uncommon for our clients to receive assistance at different times within a year. If they fall behind again, as long as there is funding available, they'll be assisted. Assistance is provided one time under each funding source, meaning if there are multiple open contracts, clients can be assisted under each of them to cover the total account balance due. But we do encourage clients to contact their utility company to find out if they qualify for any of their discount programs, such as CARES, the FARA, medical baseline, and also select the rate plan that works best for their family's energy use habits. And of course, set up any payment arrangements as needed. Most utility companies are willing to set up payment plans for up to 1 year, I believe, and we'll renegotiate those plans to accommodate any changes in reduced income. And we also encourage clients to apply for our weatherization assistance program, which involves performing activities in their home, which is designed to lower household energy costs.
Wonderful, thank you. Now here's another question for legal aid. It says, I am behind on my rent, mortgage, and will struggle to pay back what is owed due to COVID-19. Will these missed payments negatively impact my credit?
All right, so this one is a really technical question. I'm going to give a very general answer. that's brief and hopefully hits the point, but I do welcome you to seek attorney advice and not merely rely on this really brief answer. First, let's talk about renters. SB 91 prohibits a housing provider, a tenant screening company, or other entity that evaluates tenants on behalf of a housing provider from using COVID-19 rental debt as a negative factor for evaluating prospective housing applications. So it's a really fancy way to say that your future landlord it is not supposed to hold that against you. Now, we did not forget homeowners. As for homeowners, as for reporting to credit for homeowners under the CARES Act and amendments to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, a consumer whose account was not previously delinquent is current on their loan if they have received an accommodation and made payments according to that accommodation. So if you fell behind as a homeowner and you sought that forbearance, you sought some kind of plan, you were supposed to be recorded as current. And so hopefully that's going to, really prevent you from suffering those negative outcomes that were suggested.
Wonderful. Thank you. Here's another one for Michelle. It says, I have not received a disconnection notice, but I am anticipating I will need assistance before 6 to 8 weeks on my utilities. Is there a faster way to get assistance?
Of course. So if you are or may be in jeopardy of being disconnected, you can reach out to our agency to find out if you qualify for assistance, where we will make what we call a pledge on either your electric or gas account to prevent a disconnection of services or restore your services if they have already been interrupted. Most utility companies will honor our pledge for up to 90 days. However, you would still be responsible for making your regular monthly payments that become due while the payment is processing and thereafter. This funding can also be used to purchase wood.
Wonderful. And Michelle, there was a follow-up question. Would you open the line for the follow-up question?
Okay.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Okay. Or I'll ask the question. It says, that the funds available are not based on fiscal year funding. They were previously advised that CAP San Bernardino County could only help one time per fiscal year.
So there's always a confusion there just because of the language. So the contract says we can only provide assistance one time per program year, which is basically you can only receive assistance one time per that funding for the most part. But if there's other funding available for us to use, then we'll do that. So technically it is one time, but it's for each funding source.
Wonderful. So they can, the bottom line is that they should explain the situation to you, and then you'll figure out
Absolutely.
if you can get the funding. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And here's a question for Lori. It says, I am a small landlord with 2 apartments. I cannot afford to not receive rent. How can I encourage my tenants to seek benefits that are being offered? Where should I send them in San Bernardino? And my question as a follow-up would be, where would you send them for other cities other than San Bernardino?
Yeah, so Carl had some great resources up on the slides that he shared. The Housing is Key website, state website, it tracks the funding that's coming from the Department of Treasury. And so it highlights all of the local entities that are resources for renters and landlords, because as Carl noted, there's an opportunity for landlords to tap into those resources directly, as well as if landlords choose not to do that, for renters to tap into those resources. So I think that's probably the best place to go to get all of the information, depending on your local community, is that Housing is Key website.
You know, there are so many other questions. Thank you so much, Lori. We still have more questions and more that are coming in, but we are out of time. I do want to encourage all of you. You have your congressman here, Congressman Pete Aguilar. You have me on this call. You have lots of other representatives. If you happen to not live in our district, please know we're here to help you. We are here to make sure that whatever benefits are available at the national level, if you call us about a national program, we will refer you to our congressman because his office is has more of that information. But thank you so much. To all of you who asked the questions, we're going to try to get answers for you. Now, at this time, though, I would like to ask Congressman Pete Aguilar if you would share a few closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Assemblywoman, and I appreciate you hosting this panel and all of our panelists for sharing their knowledge and their resources and their slide decks. I understand how difficult of a time this is for so many Inland Empire families. The American Rescue Plan was a huge step toward providing the tools and resources we need, but I know that there's more that we can do, and there will continue to be rolling out additional resources and help associated with the American Rescue Plan. I'll continue working in Congress with my partners and friends at the local level to help make sure Inland Empire residents have access to affordable housing, mortgage assistance, rental assistance, and programs to ensure every family has a roof over their heads. I want everyone to know that my office should be a resource, as the Assembly member said. You can reach us at 909-890-4445. One more time, 909-890-4445. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Bishop Simmons, some closing remarks, please.
Right now, a lot of our congregations are returning to their buildings. They're making plans. Some have already returned. And when they get there, they meet families that are excited to gather, and they're excited to be in the building, but they also have concerns. So webinars and town halls like this is very important. We know that congregations were the first stop that when it was time to do the testing and do vaccinations, say, can you pitch in? And we said yes. So we want to make sure that we continue our collaborations like this so that we can help our families. So when they come to worship, they come with the least amount of concerns as possible. So I want to thank you, Majority Leader and Congressman Aguilar, for coming together with us. And we look forward to working with you in the future to help solve some of the issues that impact our families. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bishop. Now, before I close, I do know that there is a very specific question from Romelia Neri. We're going to try to get back to her with an answer. And I know, Lori, it'll be a question that I know we're going to ask you about later. So I want to thank our guests for being here and for joining us in the community town hall. I want to thank the rest of you for joining us and thank you for your questions. We do believe that the best way to provide useful information to you and to your family is to first listen to your concerns and then to provide the resources. That's what we're trying to do here. Again, I want to thank you all. Please reach out to us. Our number is 909-381-3238. Again, 909-381-3238. Call us with any of your questions. And until we have our next one, please stay safe. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Wear your mask in public. Keep your distance. Check in on your loved ones. And please, please, please get vaccinated. Thank you all so very much. Have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.